time opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
And welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie Dallas Buyers Club this week. I'm your host, John Comerford, and I'm joined here on the big panel by
Sarah Stratton. Hi, guys.
Dimitri Panos, happy Friday the 13th, everybody. Nothing like a machete to the face to start off the day.
And I'm Phil Svitek.
And helming in the booth is Marissa Serafini, who will be chiming in from time to time.
Hello, everyone.
All right, Dallas Buyers Club. A lot of buzz here, especially for the performances of Matthew McConaughey, and even I would say even more so for Jared Leto. So let's start off right away with what was your overall impressions? What was your feeling as you came out of this movie?
Oh, am I going first?
Yeah, sure.
I really liked this movie. However, I felt myself cringing a lot. There was a lot of times I was just like, this is hard to watch.
Because they lost so much weight, or because the subject matter? Or?
I mean, when Jared Leto got skinnier than me, I was a little disturbed. But no, just it's a hard thing to watch someone go through, and there's certain points in this movie where it does really hit you, and I think
it's
that's
pretty
a good
raw.
point.
I mean, it's unfettered and unfiltered, I should say.
And it's good that they do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it is rough and gritty, and that they do illustrate a lot of different points of view of the story. So, but it was hard. It was hard for me at certain points, but I'm really glad I saw it, and I would watch it again, and I think they did a really nice job.
Dimitri, follow up with that.
I agree. I think it's I think it is a very, very well done film, and I personally liked the take that they did it from this cowboy, this heterosexual, homophobic cowboy,
in the middle
this
of
tough
Dallas
guy
too, is the other
in the middle of
Texas.
Dallas. You know, I mean, I think that adds this other layer, because a lot of, you have Philadelphia is I mean, something you can really compare this movie to. And with everything, with all these other, there have been other AIDS types of movies, and it's focused on the gay culture or whatnot. But this is the first movie that actually says this isn't a gay disease. And I respect that. And I thought that there was a different point of view to look at. And I found the movie to be courageous in both its themes and its performances. I thought the guy who directed it did a really good job. I love the bookends of the movie. And, Griffin Dunn. It was great seeing somebody Griffin Dunn in there as the doctor. I'm like,
Mexico.
I was like really happy to see him. And again, I just and Jennifer Garner turned things around. I was never a big Jennifer Garner fan. Her last movie, Curious Life of Timothy Green, I thought, all right, she's cute, she's good. This movie, I was like, she's really good in this movie. And so this movie, when I got out, as we talked about it and said, yeah, this is definitely one of the better, excellent movies of the year.
On to you, Phil.
My take is a little more controversial. Here's the thing. I don't know. I love I like more comedic movies and things like that. And so, ironically enough, like critically acclaimed movies for me, I'm like, do I have to see that? But and especially
important films.
I know, but
changing,
and especially with the subject matter, I was like, is this going to be such a downer and things like that? But ironically, it was quite there. There was a lot of comedic moments, believe it or not, that we'll also talk about, and also what I liked was, he was smarter than he let on initially.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Especially even though he's homophobic and things like that, and his moments when he goes to the groups and he's like, don't touch me, get away from me. But he's there for a specific cause because he's trying to learn more about this disease. He's he's becoming smarter, and I like that aspect of the movie.
Yeah, I think, to your point, he ended up being like, when you see him at the beginning of the movie, he's sort of a douche. Like he's not anybody that you'd really like. Yeah. But he has that there was that scene in the library when he's looking stuff up. Now, number one, I thought, again, the guy knew how to use a library. He was using this thing called microfiche. Yeah. It was like, wow, that's awesome. But, which again, I gave the movie credit, and I know the guy. It's based off a true story. It's
Yes.
based off a real person.
Ron Woodroof.
So, Ron did this research, but I gave that credit because I found that to be courageous. And when he had that epiphany that, when he was in denial, and yet he's in the library, and you see, it could be caught from needles, and he just, when he let out that fuck, you just, it dawned on him, and he did whatever he could. He became a smarter, better person.
Yeah, I would say that it's very true. He became very knowledgeable about this disease, about how you get it, and then all the way through, like all the drugs, all the information he was constantly getting, and how he kept searching for the next thing and the best thing for him to fight and be able to survive longer. Yeah. I thought adding that and really putting it in his hands, and how they made him this businessman who's really fighting for himself, and then kind of let people join along instead of being like, I'm going to fight for everyone. I thought that was an interesting perspective.
Absolutely.
And I also, before we get into everything, what I liked about it was that in some ways it's very topical. Obviously it deals with the medical industry, which, with healthcare and things like that going on. But also, that's, in terms of AIDS, it's, people are knowledgeable to this day, and they're being educated more and more, but it's, I don't know, I don't feel like the average person is looking for that knowledge, and so it almost puts it into a greater consciousness of, we're almost being re-educated and reminded of, like, here's where we were, here's where we are kind of today.
Right.
And, it is important to still kind of do your own research.
I liked it as well, because I thought on par it had a good balance of everything. It had comedy, because I think you needed to use the comedy to cut, because there's some tragic things going on here. People are dying before your eyes, and slowly, which is just torturous. But what I also liked about it is, because we have And the Band played on, and that really talked about the nuts and bolts of how this thing came into existence, and what happened with the CDC and Robert Gallo and all those things involved in trying to find out what the HIV virus was and how it's contracted and everything like that. But what I liked about this one is I haven't really seen that FDA stuff and how much they were kind of blocking.
And there is some controversy to that, and to the accuracy that this film portrays, and how there is a lot of, I guess, blame put on the government and on the medical and pharmaceutical industry in this movie in particular. And supposedly a little bit of that was stretched.
I absolutely can believe that, but I also, the thing that I did like about it is things like that do happen, and that's the thing that I wanted to know is, like, how much of that was true. Because obviously this is not it's not a documentary. We're not
the fact that it reads true, because it's not that far-fetched that that could be a reality.
Well, it is a reality. I mean, I just recently went through, Brenda actually more, went through, major bout of cancer and dealing with the healthcare system and trying to get drugs.
Right.
There were times where things were being blocked.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Like, where literally even, a doctor would say, what the hell? And so there was stuff going on in this that I completely understood. And, this has been situations that have been happening for years on down the line, and they continue. Healthcare is as relevant today as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
And by the way, as we discussed this, it's really not what the movie's about. That's part of it, but it's just it's just a thread that runs through it. Just as that's another thread, which is how difficult it was for people just to take homosexuality seriously and deal with them as human beings rather than derogatory terms or whatever.
Right, but we'll take it up. We can take it that next step, because even the director himself, he is, in his interviews that he's been doing, he even said, like, he didn't want to necessarily present the FDA and the doctors as villains. And Dennis O'Hara, he's not a bad guy, he was saying. He goes, they're human. They at the time, they were doing what they believed was the right thing to do.
Yeah, remember, this is 1985. This is at the beginning of all this. We really had very little knowledge of what everything was about, how it occurred, how it happened, how it was transferred, all that kind of stuff. So that's
as it got escalated in the movie, I don't know, from what I gather as audience reaction, I don't think it's that the fact that they were blocking certain drugs necessarily. It's the fact that by that time, when he actually had his own research and could prove, like, hey, this drug works better, yours doesn't.
And he was using some of their own research against themselves.
Exactly.
It was even further. It wasn't that he didn't have the support or the evidence, or even that they hadn't proven that they were wrong. He was using all those and still being blocked when it was valid and his efforts were valid.
Exactly, and it
justified.
was and I don't know if there's anything more than there's because it's a huge bureaucracy. It takes a lot longer than somebody who's much more nimble and agile who can do things on the
a lot of red tape.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all that issue, but primarily it's really about Ron Woodroof's experience and arc through this story, rather than whether or not it's FDA or whatever it is. It's actually his, and of course Jared Leto's to some degree, but it's really Ron's story. It's how he gets through this, how he negotiates and navigates his way through this experience. Yeah, and that's what's so compelling, and it has been anyway, because I think most people will say, "Wow, I've never seen Matthew better."
I would agree. I mean, I would totally agree with that 100%. I mean, a lot of people are saying, geez, where did this guy come from? When did he learn how to act? And my simple answer to that is he always knew how to act. If you look early on in his career, he was a good actor. I think now he's at this maturity stage, and he's picking great roles.
I mean, let's face it, Mud was a great year for him.
Yeah, it's a great year for him.
Yeah, this one, Wolf of Wall Street, has an amazing cameo in that.
Yeah, so I think for him, he was in Magic Mike. He was fantastic in Magic Mike, and these aren't the roles that he was being put in. He was being put into these dopey romantic comedies, and it's hard to shine in those, especially if they suck. But these movies are really good.
And honestly, part of me also wonders if what he went through personally, as Matthew McConaughey, has affected his acting, because originally we did see him in the romantic comedy like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days and all of those, and he gained a lot of success from them. And then from that, he had huge scandals in the press about being on drugs, drinking alcohol, kind of falling apart, being a mess in places. And then from there, once he kind of kicked that habit, he was able to kind of come back and do all these films. So part of me wonders if going through that and all the struggles he must have had personally have affected his acting, because a lot of these roles are dealing with tragic circumstances or people who are in bad places in life and they're much recover and turn around. And I think maybe he personally can now identify with that a little more, so he's able to access those places more easily. They're kind of closer to home.
Yeah, I just say, like I said, I think he matured. Again, I never looked at Matthew McConaughey as, to me, the deepest scandal story was when he was playing the bongos naked, at his house.
And who hasn't?
Right. Well, those aren't bongos. But in any case, I just find that I had experience with Matthew McConaughey when I was working on Contact, and he was the guy that you see. He was very affable, really. He had that charm. He never mistreated anybody. He was nice to everybody that he met. He was a very professional, consummate worker, and he was great. And I had the fortune of being able to see him do his job and work, and he was excellent. And yes, he lived a life. He makes a ton of money. He was able to do a lot. But I think through his maturity, he decided to say no to a lot of roles. And, to his credit, he's working with Steven Soderbergh. He does Mud, this movie. He works with Scorsese. And he's had, is it fair to say, a renaissance?
Well, a lot of people are calling it that, using that term, and that this is kind of not the icing on the cake, but really what's making that realization happen to the public and not just to the critics.
And so watch A Time to Kill.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's a good actor. Yeah, he's a really good actor. He happens to be a good-looking guy, son of a bitch, but he's a good actor.
I don't know, is he? Yeah.
I will agree that he is. He hit on my mom once.
What? 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 That is a wow.
Was he naked and playing bongos?
No, they were in the airport.
That's an exclusive right there. In the airport.
Matthew McConaughey hit on my mom.
Mile high.
with a closed or open hand.
Wow.
Anyway.
Okay, let's move on quickly.
Well, speaking of Matthew, in order to make this movie happen, he put up some money into it.
Yes.
which I found interesting. That seems to be happening more and more, especially in the critically acclaimed movies.
Yeah, because they're so hard to find financing, and it's the only way you can sell them is with a star anyway. But then sometimes they have to put their own money because they believe in the project so much. Or I mean, who knows? I didn't. Maybe you read, but I'm not exactly sure why he was so drawn to this. Whether he just thought it was a great role, a great story. I'm not exactly sure. Did you have any information?
Well, I mean, I think
that?
there's a lot of information on how this story progressed, how it kind of got finally to be made, and also on top of that, budget and all the other stuff. There's a lot of information out there. We know that this script was written, I believe, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Of the writer, who I'm just about to what's his name?
The writer of the film.
Burn. I don't know.
The writer is
Thank you.
Craig Borton and Melissa Wallach.
There we go. So Craig Borton doesn't have any really credits to his name. Now that he's done this, he's been pulled onto The 33, which is a story about the miners that were trapped. He brought in someone else to help kind of script doctor it because it went through so many people, and big names were like called in. I mean, they had Brad Pitt listed on it for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a whole. I mean, Borton was Ryan Gosling. Craig Borton was just getting out of film school, didn't exactly know what he wanted to do. And this was literally his first screenplay, and it was one of those screenplays that around Hollywood it was being touted as the best screenplay that's never going to be made, and a lot of it was due to subject matter and getting it done. But when he had heard about this Ron Woodroof gentleman, he actually called him up and he said, "You know what? This is an interesting take on this because he is a cowboy, he's heterosexual." That his story could make a good movie. So he called him and he basically drove from LA to Dallas to interview him, which was it took about 3 days, and he crafted a screenplay, and the screenplay got all over Hollywood.
Well, I also believe that Woodroof at first resisted, and then finally closer to the time that he actually ended up passing away, that was when he allowed him to come and be interviewed, and they have a bunch of recordings, and Matthew McConaughey was eventually allowed to get hands on his diary, which helped him with his role. And really, he described it as the diary just really being the character's monologue. And him having that as an actor, it being so much easier to tap into and understand, and why he fell in love with the project so much was because he was interested in Ron and his story.
Yeah, and Melissa Wallach, she had no Hollywood experience whatsoever. She comes out of Minnesota, where her and her sister, they had like a large paperwork. They handled paperwork for large companies, and they decided to open an office in LA, and she just got bit by the writing bug. And, I mean, yeah, so it's one of those stories. And now, she has Dallas Buyers Club. And when you look at, again, when you're looking at how things, the company Voltage Pictures, which helped finance Hurt Locker, which gave them a lot of cred. They were going through so many people. Woody Harrelson and Dennis Hopper were attached to this. They wanted to make this movie, and Columbia Pictures was ready to buy it and go forward, but they didn't. Nothing ever happened. And with Brad Pitt, it was Brad Pitt and Mark Forrester who were going to make it, and they were good for doing it. That never happened, but they later went on to do World War Z together. So it went through a lot of hands, as
And then they did have financing, and they were planning shooting it, and then it came up to, I believe, within a couple of weeks before, the point that Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto had already lost the weight.
Yeah.
And then the money dropped out. And that's when McConaughey had to kind of step up and put some of his money in it, because
otherwise they wouldn't have been made.
Exactly. I mean, there was one of them quoted like, either you're giving us money or we're putting him on a feeding tube. You don't have a choice. He's in the position where he needs to shoot now. This is a health risk. His diet was
his time was running out. And according to an article I read, their angel came from an unlikely place. Ellie's ex-wife, Holly Wiersma, also a producer, was now dating an investor producer by the name of Logan Levy. And Levy's father had a friend who worked at Truth Chemical, a Houston-based company that made its money primarily in the fertilizer business. Wow. And Hollywood glamour wasn't, but the Truth Chemical partners, Tony Notargiacomo and Joe Newcomb, were hankering to get into the movie business. A period of AIDS drama wasn't exactly what they had in mind, but McConaughey, who is big in Texas,
Yep.
They liked his swagger. It had buzz, and there you go.
They ended up making this movie for, I think, about $3.5 million to $5.5 million. They've already have almost $13 million.
Yeah, they have
box
13
office.
they have about 13 as of today. Believe it or not, they have about 13 million in the bank, which is good for it's
gonna be good.
it's
more
released by Focus.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and the nominations.
Yeah, that was,
once it with the Academy Award nominations
Always
and
put a
such.
kick in the pants for movies.
Hey, honestly, I think that our actor category, our best actor category, it's gonna be insane this year. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be an incredible.
I want to
when
say,
it whittles down.
but out of the SAG nominations and the Golden Globe nominations, this movie, Dallas Buyers Club, I believe only has 2 nominations, and they're both for acting.
Yeah.
We don't have anything in the no Best Picture, no screenwriting,
no director, no writer. Yeah, just the acting
and cast. Yeah, so we've got Best Lead Actor, Best Supporting Actor in Drama, and then Best Cast in the SAG, which I find interesting. And people always nag about how award season's very political, and part of me wonders if these writers are so new to this world, and if this movie's getting such acclaim and people are liking it and the acting is good, that's also because there's fantastic writing. And I'm surprised that you can be nominated in so many categories and not have another nomination in more of the background.
Look what happened with Argo last year.
Yeah.
Best Picture.
Yeah.
They didn't want to give him Best Director. He wasn't even nominated.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it probably was political.
Yeah, well,
It is. That's why people
we can
complain.
talk about the Hollywood Foreign Press, but with the Academy Awards, I would be a little surprised if since they're allowed to nominate up to 10 Best Pictures, that this wouldn't be one of those 10. I would be a little surprised if that didn't happen. McConaughey, I think, is a shoo-in to get nominated. After watching this performance, right now I would have to say he's definitely a front runner, as of right now. But now the politicking is going to start. All the studios are getting all this free press and publicity, and they're feeding off of the Golden Globes currently. So they'll use that going into nomination. But, again, when you're looking at him, when you're looking at Bruce Dern, when you're looking at Chitwell, I forget his last name.
Leonardo.
When you're looking at him and I'm not even going to say
Robert
Christian
Redford.
Bale, maybe. You're looking at, it's going to be I think it's going to be a very tight race when when Best Actor nominations come through.
Well,
I have a lot of theories on this one.
Oh,
I'll have to make a poll or
okay,
something.
well, when we do our Oscars podcast, we'll talk about all those theories. Unless you want to talk about specifics of this
No.
movie.
I
Okay.
think that there's going to be a lot of eyes, especially on lead actor this season.
Well, let's ask this question because you brought it up, sir. Was all right. It wasn't nominated or hasn't been acknowledged for its writing. I mean, what do you think that would be? I mean, because we're talking about this movie right now, and do you think it warrants it, or is it because it's only because of the performances that it elevates the movie?
And I think a lot of that character was brought through the dialogue, through how it was written. I think that the comedy and the drama and all of that comes from the writing of this movie. And I think that it does need a little more credit. And I think that people are sometimes very willing to say, oh, this person's new, they did a good job. But really, these people have been around in the business for this long and have all these credits, and they should get the credit because obviously without them, this movie wouldn't have done what it does.
Yeah, and then
I'm
sometimes
not saying
the new one, but because sometimes it works in the reverse. Sometimes the new ones, like Juno, first time writer, and then of course, Matt and Ben for Good Will Hunting. So sometimes it works to your advantage. But I think you're right. I think because they're so unknown, I think that has.
But I think in terms of
and the thing is, when you bring up Good Will Hunting, which is a great movie and did get huge acclaim for these being like the new guys on the block, new friends, but they were in it. You visually saw them. Like there's not a face connected to these people because they're so new, and they've done this great thing and really have to create a movie and have it be nominated and have all this press and it going all to the actors and not to the...
With the writing, what I like about it is, again, we start off, you don't really like him right off the bat.
Right.
And, you know, I think it's
he's
different.
a prick. I mean, let's
He
put
is.
it out there. They start him out. He's
And he
just
has one
and what
because
I-
he uses it.
Yeah,
That's how the
yeah.
movie opens.
Very true. And it starts off about being money for him. And I think, you know, you can ask anybody, and there's different points, milestones in the movie
Yeah.
of when they actually start to like him. For me, it was when I saw him in the library. You could argue that when, you know, they wrote faggot on his outside of his house,
Right.
that could be another point. Or I thought if you weren't at that point converted, then certainly when Rayon died, remember, because it was all about money and
Yeah.
this isn't charity, get
Yeah.
out of here. And at that point, it was like, no, this is for people are dying.
Or even in the market.
The market.
Yeah, I was
gonna
gonna
say,
say
that's
market's
the
a
first
great
time he
thing.
actually
There is-
stands up for them.
There is one thing that we
Right.
haven't brought up regarding the writing. I think that it could be tough because so much of this is fiction. Like if Ron Woodroof is the only true real character, how much of this is actually true. And if you're looking at it from a writing standpoint, yeah, but if the Rayon character doesn't exist, if a lot of these people are out,
I understand your point.
But
well,
like
because I think it's coming off as if it's a true story,
Right.
and some of the controversy is, well, it's not entirely a true story.
But wouldn't that
It's
make
not
the
re-
writing that much better? Because you
Yeah.
created this wonderful character to help tell the story out of nothing.
two
But if
wonderful
you're-
Yeah,
characters.
exactly.
Dr.
I
Rayon.
get it, but if you're copying as being a true story,
But
and it
that's
ends
a-
up not being
I
a
have-
true story,
I'm not with your argument, but I'll just take issue with anybody that goes to a movie that says it's based on a true story or is inspired by true events. Why would anybody think that's the accurate depiction? It's a dramatized event.
I
But-
give,
but
I give
when you
American Hustle a lot of because they open up on American Hustle. Some of these events actually happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case with this, where
Right.
I don't, some of these events happen,
And
but a lot of them didn't.
When this happens, and I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's because I go to movies and I want to see a good story. That's
Right.
the point. I want to get a message. And if they have to alter people or
Yeah.
stories to get it all in one film, because they said Rand's a compilation of a bunch of people and a bunch of people's stories.
But they don't-
and you
don't
can't
sell the
have
movie that
all
way.
those
No.
characters.
no, I understand. All I'm saying is, like, if you're looking to nominate, okay, then is it based off of something? I'm just saying, I'm playing that devil's
Yeah.
advocate. Like, if you're looking to nominate and they're basically saying, hey, this is based off a true story, yet you can point to characters that just didn't exist. And then if you start poking at, like, the whole AZT, there's a controversy about that, about the writing as well. That could be a reason why. I'm not
I
saying
think-
it's the sole reason, but that could play into they're
could be
looking at
justification.
this stuff. Yeah.
I think one of the
Justification theory,
reasons that it's not getting more acclaim for the writing is because a lot of people didn't understand its point of view. Meaning, is it about the FDA thing? Is it about the AZT? Is it about this or is it about that? And that narrative was kind of murky at times because we weren't sure what kind of movie we were in. That's some arguments that I've heard, and I can actually see that because even I'm going, well, it's not really about that. It's certainly a thread in there, and I think that if they had been more clear focused, I would say, on certain things and
Well,
let the other
especially-
ones
And
take
it's-
second.
By the
And
ending.
I think-
Yeah, and that's a very interesting perspective. I guess my view on it is that's something personally that I really like.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
I think that's kind of how the world works. I think that, like, the world exists on multiple levels and multiple layers, and there's always all these different things going on that affects people and their
Right.
situation. So I like that. No, this isn't completely about the AFDA, and no, this isn't completely about homophobia, but it's about this man who's dealing with all of these things on his journey, and I like that all of these different conditions are impacting him. So yeah, I guess it could be a little murky, and for some people it's not focused enough, but I
be.
like it.
And the other thing that I was thinking about was, go ahead. Did you want to say something about that? or-
Well, I want to ask you guys this. In writing, you're supposed to. What would you guys define whether not the log line, because that's easy to figure out. A man's kind of dealing with AIDS and he's got supposedly 30 days to live. Whatever you want.
One line was period piece, HIV,
That's the tagline. That wouldn't be the log line.
or what?
But what do you guys think is the controlling idea?
The controlling idea of this.
Yes.
It's one man's struggle with a disease.
Let me look up the full definition so I can explain fully what a controlling idea is. But
Yeah,
John,
what
to
is
your
it?
point,
Well,
we can
John wants the
move back to
controlling
this.
idea. Can you answer this question?
Well, I'll let him bring that up and then we'll discuss it. But what I was going to talk about in terms of it, I think the other reason why some people are having challenges with the script and storyline is that typically you would have a clear, and this goes back to the focus thing. For instance, if we can take Schindler's List, at the beginning it's all business. It's all about money. He doesn't care about these people. Not really. I mean, they're just means to an end, which is very much like our Ron Woodroof character. He doesn't really care about it's a means to an end. It's a business. I'm making money. And that's why he says, as Phil rightly says, look, this is not charity.
Well, and in Mexico, he even says,
absolutely.
You want to make some money off of this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a business. And, he's obviously trying to survive, but really he's trying to make money. Sure. But by the end of Schindler's List, we really get to see him understand that he sees these as people and how much more he could have done. And you get to see that full arc. You don't get to see that as much. It's a much more subtle because you never really get to see him have that epiphany. It kind of happens. I mean, he certainly stands up for Rayon especially in the market that Sarah mentioned. But at the end of the movie, you never really get the understanding that he's really kind of sees everybody in this together as one. It just doesn't happen as clearly as you might see it in more traditional movies.
You know what, though?
It's still kind of about him. I mean, you get the bookend that Demetria mentioned about the bull riding.
Exactly.
And that's
he doesn't go from the selfish to the unselfish. He still has that kind of thing.
I sort of kind of disagree.
Traditionally, that's why traditionally you would normally see somebody have a bigger arc and have a more universal understanding.
I because I think his
arc...
Are
you going to tell me that Schindler's List didn't have that arc?
I'm talking about. We're talking about Dallas Buyers Club.
I know,
here.
and I'm saying traditionally,
but I'm saying that,
and you're disagreeing.
Woodroof had a major arc. I mean, he's a completely different person by the end of Dallas Buyers Club than he was at the beginning. I mean, his what becomes his family are these people, these different varying people who are afflicted with this, who love him and he loves back. And it turns into, I mean, when he comes after his defeat in San Francisco and he comes and he was trying to defend like this, it was above and beyond
I didn't say he was defending it for everybody else. I thought he was defending his.
I don't
thing.
think it was just for him. I think it was for everybody because when he comes back, they're all.
Yeah, they applaud him, but I don't see him shifting a lot to realize that.
I did. Yeah. No,
I think
that's
what I missed for me.
I think he had a complete.
Yeah,
arc.
I disagree.
Yeah, I think he had
I think that's why people are having challenges with it, is because it's not as, you don't get to see it as much. It's a little bit. For me. It's
I
on
think
the back.
I guess I would agree that it's not as clear as your typical Hollywood picture, but I feel like this whole film is gritty and muddy and.
No, I think people are having trouble with it because of the topic. I think people. I think people.
We've been dealing with this topic for decades now.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I think people are having trouble with it because of the topic. I think it's a tough topic to make a movie.
Anybody's having a problem with that.
I'm just saying. Go ahead.
I have to say something. The story takes place in the 1980s. Yes, AIDS was just a beginning subject. People are still learning about it. But you have to think, this takes place in Dallas, Texas. Texas state is known for being a mostly conservative state, and more so Dallas is dominated by more conservatives. So even at that time, when AIDS was just a growing thing, and then still being conservative in that area, I think that's another hard thing that people are grasping onto.
I think that, I don't know. I just don't think that there's anything super clean cut about this movie, and I think that's why it's fun and interesting, and that it's not a picture perfect situation. It's not something that's easily talked about or easily shown. And so I think that, you know what, maybe it's just to get people talking. And obviously there's disagreements and people think it's too muddy or too non-traditional, but I think that I can't picture it another way. Unless, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
And let's talk about that, because part of the reason why it is, I think, more raw is because of the budget. Because it's not sanitized and it's not overproduced. I mean, it's pretty much
Well, it is very
shoot
raw.
it good. And I mean, I was at the DGA at the screening, and I was there with and they had a Q&A with the director, and they shot and he says it was a $5 million budget, and they shot with all practical lighting.
Yep.
He didn't even have an electrician. There was no electrical clue. He just turned to a cinematographer and said, "Here's a scene." And this cinematographer said, "Okay, let's, okay,
Is it bright enough? Good.
Which is great.
That's it.
Turn up the ISO.
So, and until I saw the whole movie, before I even learned that, I didn't even notice it a whit until they said that, and I went, "Oh my God!" I was so involved in the movie, and that and I think it added to the movie because it felt more. You felt like it was just happening in front of you, rather than sitting back and watching something that is a movie produced by a studio.
You didn't need
whatever.
it. You didn't need like harsh lighting on faces.
Yeah,
Like, as long as you could see the people and and things, and they used the camera work itself was good.
The camera work. Listen, I thought the
There's only
cinematographer
2 shots that I was like, "What?" The camera's like, "What?" Focus the damn
It
thing.
was wasn't it a handheld?
It was
Mostly,
handheld.
Yeah,
but
I
there was
mean-
only 2 shots that I thought were out. We talked
Honestly,
later.
I think though, into the direct, you might have more insight because I don't know how much he delved into it, but he just it really gave a sense of reality. And when you looked, especially when he had close-ups of the people's faces, there was a certain kind of shadowing and things and a pallor, so to speak. And again, I didn't until I researched the movie after watching it. I was like, holy cow, that's I had no idea.
Yeah.
I said, and wow, using just natural light was fantastic. And the cinematography, to me, my favorite scene in the entire movie. And again, it was great. It was when he was praying. He was praying, and there was like red candlelight, and you're thinking he's in a church, and it's like, wow, okay, he's in a church and he's praying, give me strength, I need to get through this and whatever. And when the camera pulls back, you find out, well, he was in a sort of kind of church, but he was in a strip club. And to me, I had no idea. That was a great shot. The way that it pulls back, it was a nice bait and switch, so to speak. And again, if you're using natural lighting, man, in that scene, because it looked like he was in a, it was supposed to look like a church. That was their whole thing, and it worked. And I was like, to me, that was one of the more powerful scenes in the movie. To see him playing that way.
To that point, a lot of the story is told visually, right?
Yeah.
And so it obviously had to work. And as he's praying, it's ironic enough that his prayer gets quote unquote answered because there's the guy from the hospital that he remembers, and it's like, okay, let's make this deal.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get the AZT.
Yeah,
I agree. I also want to point out just the fact that as you were talking about that scene, it reminded me, like, in this film, I felt like there were just so many good scenes. Like when I watch a movie, there's normally a couple like stick out scenes where I'm like, okay, these are my favorites. These 3 happened. I was really moved or energized or whatever by these moments. And there were so many interesting moments in this. From the bullfighting to, like, the market was a really big one for me, to a lot of Jared Leto's scenes. He was a big scene stealer. To random things like the butterflies in Mexico.
Yeah,
There's just a lot of very interesting moments that I felt were very fascinating. Just fascinating scene after scene after scene.
Because I gotta say, I saw the butterflies and I went, what the hell? Why?
It was
what
very
is this?
random.
Exactly.
That one
It was like
a little
so random. I was like,
I'll
what
give
is
you
that?
I'll give you that one was a little
well,
random.
Transformation, is that what's supposed to be?
Well, but don't forget the
He's harvesting
caterpillars.
caterpillars for the medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I know, but in terms of the metaphor, is the butterflies there for his transformation? That's what I'm wondering.
That one I can't answer
Okay.
for you.
'Cause
I know
I was like,
I know
what
that
the
the
hell?
bull riding was a metaphor. 'Cause
Yeah,
they've
the-
talked about that.
Yes.
well,
That one I know.
I just took it as like that awesome scene in Avatar when he's on the branch and the little lifelines come on to what's this? But no, the butterfly scene was a beautiful scene. But again, I think most impactful, again, for me, was that scene in the strip club. Because if you're writing a script, you say, like, when you're writing a scene, you say the location, you say the setting. Would you start off with strip club, or do you say setting church?
No,
Blah, blah, blah.
could-
But then when the camera
Yeah.
pulls back, you realize it's not a church, it's an actual strip
Just
club.
kidding. Strip club.
And I don't know, to me, that the way that it was filmed, it hooked me because I thought he was in a church, and he is in a church in a sense. And to your point, his prayers get answered. I think the scenes with Matthew McConaughey, that scene where they tell him that he has AIDS, that was a great scene, too. And I don't know. I'm going into the story arc again. I'm sorry.
I said the scene where he gets a new girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, I like
the opening shot is pretty dark, but what's going on, and I don't know.
For me, it goes back to the fact that they shot with natural lighting. Well, because it accomplishes so many things that I think every filmmaker wishes they had. Right? They can move at the speed of thought.
Yeah.
So instead of having to reset up and things like that, of like, okay, we got to move these lights because we got to, you can shoot however you want, and it keeps because in film, when you're not shooting, you're losing money. Now, part of the thing is you also want to shoot fast. I mean, it took them 25 days to make this. Yeah. And so, you know what? You can be in that consistency emotionally rather than like, okay, now we got, 3-hour break because we got to reset up and things like that.
And it was interesting, as you said, because one of the things the director was saying is on the day of the shoot, they would just, okay, what are we doing? This is the scene, go ahead. And they would just say, go. And sometimes they would just shoot without even planning anything. They would just shoot and they would just move so that they would get the light right as it was happening. And sometimes that's it. They would that would be the scene was done. And if it didn't work for whatever reason, lighting wise or blocking wise or whatever, they just go, okay, let's do it again, and they just try it from a different angle or they'd work it out. But I find, like you said, the speed of thought. It's just like, okay, here's where we are. This is our location. This is what we have to shoot with. Lights. There's the window. All right, that's it. Okay, block it. Go.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Sounds fun.
And exactly, as an
like
actor,
so
I mean,
fun.
right? When you have a ball.
I have a great time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like Jared Leto, I don't think supposedly never broke character.
Yeah, they say
He
that.
that's what I heard. Speaking of the market, he went to the market as that, when the cameras weren't on, and he got a lot of looks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask, because I'm sorry to go back to this, but when you talk about an arc, at the very beginning of this movie, we talked about how he was pretty much a prick.
Yeah.
He's an ass. He's a homophobe and whatnot. I mean, at the end of the movie, did you still look at him as still being homophobic? Did you see him not being a different man than he was at the very beginning of the movie?
I'm not suggesting that he doesn't have an arc. I'm just saying it's not clear. It's not as clear as it would be in a traditional film, and I'm not. That's all I'm saying.
A traditional film would be like, okay, we have to get. It would be a clear goal, like
there'd be a much more.
Hey, let's get the arc.
It's not focused.
The Ark of the Covenant, whatever it is.
No, I understand what an arc is, but an arc would include that the man changed.
Right.
He did transform with the butterflies.
But I think there are plenty of people that made the argument, and I could actually make the argument that he sees them more as a human, but I don't think he's not.
Do you think he's a homophobe still?
I'm not going to say that he's homophobic like he's in the beginning, but I don't think he fully. I still, how do I say this? I didn't get the feeling at the end of it that he had arcs as much as I had wanted him to.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that he didn't arc. I'm just saying that it wasn't as fulfilling for me because it was like I didn't get the feeling at all towards the end of the movie. When he goes and argues, I don't really think it's about arguing for everybody else's health. I still think there was that semblance of me, this is about me.
I do think there's a layer of that. Yeah. I do think that because that's how we talked about it.
I would have wanted him to shed some of that selfishness more.
Here's why I think you're getting that feeling. They and I don't know if this was in the original script or if they used this as a technique in filmmaking, but right initially, like you have 30 days to live, and it became day 1, day 2, and such and such. And then as soon as day 30 hit and he was still alive, they kind of used it less and less.
Yeah, they dropped it.
But it was always, at that point, I was like, wait, is this movie only going to happen over the course of 30 days? Like, how is this going to work out? Is he going to die? Is the prophecy, quote unquote, going to be fulfilled? And then, and by the end, when it eventually becomes, day 2557, right? Then it was like, okay, he proved everybody wrong. And so at that point, the last thing we're left with is a big FU from him to the world, or the doctors at least.
Right.
And so that's why I think it muddies it up.
Definitely could be.
Good argument.
Sure.
I can't argue with that.
That shut all of you up. So.
I mean, but I'm just a staunch supporter that, to me, I saw a clear arc in this character's journey when he got to the end. And even when he, yeah, I mean, at the end, I think he became a more compassionate person, and
But he started.
he started off as a jerk, and he was very
began where it ended, though.
self-centered.
You know what I mean? And that's part of the
think-
thing. So it's cyclical. So it's a lot of, okay, the question does arise, how much did he change? So I see both your points.
Okay. It does get the book in. Are you talking specifically about it starts where it ended, being that it's focused on him?
No,
and
it
he's back in
starts-
the bull rank? Or
They're
what are
talking
you
about
talking
the
No.
bulls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're talking about the
But the bulls, it's a totally different situation.
Yeah.
In the first one, he's in the corner having sex. In the second one, he's getting on the bull.
Yeah.
That's a totally different world.
I wanted to know if he stayed on the 8 seconds.
Yeah, he gets on the bull, but I mean, again, it's about him. It's really for me.
Well, but the movie is about him.
I understand that, but and again, I'm just gonna just say you normally would take, and again, this is normal. You would take somebody who is selfish like that and have them evolve into something unselfish, and really
And bring a gay person to the bull ride and have them ride the
no,
bull.
no, no, it wouldn't have to be
Make
that.
them,
That would be a
make
little
them be the
trite.
rodeo clown.
But and it's to me that missed on that moment because for me it was still all about him, and I didn't.
Gotcha.
I wanted him to be less of a selfish person.
How about this? Is a great question for audiences.
Yeah.
Comment below.
Yeah,
Let us
yeah,
know what
absolutely.
you guys are thinking. Team Dimitri, Team John. Let us know what you guys think.
This is how we should phrase this question. Did Matthew McConaughey's character arc sufficiently enough?
No, I think.
'Cause
Did
you
you
say
think
they are.
because
It's
actually
a continuum.
what
Sure,
hit
no,
it-
it did. I mean, he did. I'm not debating
yeah.
that.
You
It's just-
up the argument.
no, it's not
Sorry.
an argument because I think this is a very important
just wanna
part.
phrase the question
I'm
right.
acknowledging that he does, and I because why that's why they made the movie and it works and everything. I'm just saying, yeah, but it left me flat. It's like,
Yeah,
he
and
does,
you know
it's
what?
like, eh.
and
It's like, eh.
when you put it that way, I was like, okay, I understand where you're coming. Like you said, for you, and that's I think what makes talking about any movie like this. This is what makes it fun. This is what makes it fantastic. And yes, write, comment. What do you think? Do you think that there was an arc?
I want to talk about Jared's character
Sure.
because
Because everyone's talking about his character?
yeah, I mean he's a fantastic character. The acting's phenomenal. But more or less, from a writing perspective, he's just a device.
Yep.
Nothing more.
True.
And I found that interesting, again, with his death, because he certainly never changed. You know,
But anyway, and doesn't
Well, you
have
know
to.
what?
He's
I'm
only a
going to say
secondary
something. No,
character.
I almost think, okay, the scene where Jared's character goes and visits his father to ask for money, I think that was, you could argue that is in essence a bit of change for that character, because obviously you get the sense that this family, the father especially, this father and son relationship has fallen apart because of his lifestyle choice, and for him to go to
Or his father's
dad,
inability to accept it.
Sure,
I think
true.
I think it's for the father, it's the gay thing. For him, it's that it comes with partying and drugs and all that. I don't think if he was just gay, I think there could possibly resolve more.
Okay, I think that what this comes down to is the focus on this is on Ron. And for me, True Jared's character completely was a device. But there are glimpses of his life as well. They're just not our focus. Like that scene where he goes to his father. Also, how in the beginning he's, trying to find his meds and he's kind of very like happy-go-lucky about it, trying to take it with a positive view. And then you do kind of see him fall where he's being chastised for being high all the time
Sure.
or being messed up all the time. And he's
Not eating right, even.
yeah,
Right.
and he's getting more and more down and more depressed about this disease, and it's taking over it really changes him mentally. No, he doesn't have a big character arc on perspective
Right.
and relationships and all this stuff, but he does have moments that show that he's going through his own story.
Sure.
Where, I mean, he has different levels to me, and maybe that was just the good acting and not on the writing's part, but I thought that there was glimpses of a whole life there.
Yeah, but to your point, I mean, I agree 100%. That character is a tool. It was, and I mean, a tool.
I get what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying? I mean, he was a device. It's just another way of saying device.
By
And
definition, everybody that isn't the lead is merely a device to get him the arc or her, depending on that character.
So, and
Did he
the
do his
performance we
job?
know.
That's right.
Okay, speaking of his, you know, we talked a lot about Matthew and why he would have wanted this. I think, you know, in doing research about Jared, he is doing a lot for the gay and lesbian community, and so I think that's what attracted him to the role.
I have read nothing on this, but I'm fascinated by it because, you know, he's been away. He's been doing fine.
5
His band's
years.
doing great. I mean,
Well, he quit the business to focus on the band.
Yeah.
And, you know, in an interview, he said, you know what, if it takes every 5 years to make a movie, so be it. He goes, he liked the concept of the movie. He liked what it, you know, he liked the premise, and he thought that it would be a very great challenge, and he had time to do it, and he jumped on board. And I said, you know, and you know, fine, good for him. I mean, to be able to listen, what a charmed life. To be able to go off, quit the business, go focus on a band, which he's highly successful, and then to be able to say, okay, I want to pick a
song
role.
in this movie, by the way.
Yeah,
Just
and
putting
he.
it out
Yeah, and if he's able to come back, and then he picks a movie which is getting acclaim, it's getting attention. Hey, kudos for him. I mean, you know, good job.
I mean, I have to say kudos to him too. He's a very creative artist and makes good choices. I'm not so sure though that this is specifically because it was a cause he relates to or like believes in, because he has been very active in the lesbian gay community, social media, events, all sorts of things. But personally, I think that a big part of this was time and the availability for him to do it right now, because he's mentioned other roles that he was offered that he really wanted, but he'd already made commitments to music and he just couldn't give up those commitments. And I think it was more of an opportunity and a convenient time plus a project he believed in. I don't think, from what I've read, it wasn't like I'm cold-handedly quitting the business because I hate it. It was just like, oh, I'm doing this now and it's keeping me busy, so I can't do these other things because I'm busy for the moment. Like,
Yeah, but that's 5 years of busy. I mean, if you wanted to get back into acting.
But he's been still in the film thing. Like, he's been directing his music videos. He's been doing all those stuff. He's not like completely disconnected from film or from the artistic elements of it. He's just been focusing on music. But he's been applying what he knows from film to that part of his life.
Fair enough. I just say if he wanted to act, you know, 5 years, he could have picked the project.
Oh yeah,
you know.
definitely. Like, he was still offered things.
So,
and
yeah, but
Well, I don't know anything about that, haven't read anything, but the thing I would like to discuss about Jared Leto is every time I think about it, it just kills me. I knew he was in the film because you know, I'd seen the credits, and
did you know he's 41? Because I'm just really
No, I didn't
floored
know
by
that.
the fact that he's 41.
but then
Did he hit on your dad? Or-
as I'm watching the film, it wasn't until they shoot the scene where he's walking down the street and Ron Woodroof, Matthew McConaughey's driving up and trying to get him to stop and get back in the car. I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, and I turned to the person I was watching it with, and I said, I don't know who that guy is, but he's good. And then it's like, oh my God, I totally got lost in the performance that I completely disregarded who it was. And
He's
it's not like I
wonderful.
don't know who Jared Leto is. I do, but I just completely
Didn't
missed
recognize
it.
him.
No.
No, and that's
I
great.
thought Jennifer Garner was Hilary Swank, who was originally supposed to be.
Okay, there you go.
That's a different type of thing.
That's a great
Yeah,
thing. We
Phil,
haven't
that's a
even touched
whole
upon
different
this.
category of
Let's talk about
confusion.
Jennifer Garner, because, you know, a lot of people think, and I agree with this assessment, is that she did a fine job, of course, but I don't think this is where another thing where I think there's a breakdown in maybe the writing, or I don't know, maybe there was other stuff that didn't make it into the end of the film. I don't think they gave her enough to do. I think they could have done a heck of a lot more with that character, and she kind of was relegated to a sympathetic role, and that was about it.
And especially from the perspective of, here's your romantic lead, right? But she's unattainable for the fact of, like, at this time, like, okay, you have AIDS. We can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is why
they could have
they could have really done something with
They
that, because
could've-
then they could have had a real good relationship that isn't based on sex, and they
Okay.
could have really done that.
well, but
They could
here's
have done that, and they could have given her the action because they gave her the belief that what she was
Yeah.
part of this business was wrong. But what I do like, the other side of that I do like, is that he's the one doing action. He's been put in this position where he has to, and she's thinking all these ideas and thinking this is wrong, but she's not really going after getting people good treatments or doing the right thing, whatever that may be. And I kind of like that, you know, there's that difference you get those two, not people with kind of like a similar perspective, but going about it differently.
No, that part of it I thought
That
was
I
wonderful.
like.
But you see this guy, he starts out, he obviously is having sex with a lot of women, and he's trying to, and that's pretty much how he sees them, is that's the reason why
Cattle.
they're there. And then he meets women where he's not going to do that with, and then he
Right.
could had to really understand what a real relationship with a woman is, and they didn't
Right.
even explore that.
True.
And I thought,
Yeah.
well, that was a completely missed opportunity.
Do we know if that Jennifer Gardner character was a real character, or was she
She's
just
not.
okay? I mean, there you go. I mean, once you start, to me that, and again,
But I don't understand what difference would
to
that
me
make,
it's a
because
very
even
well,
if she's
because
not one.
because it's a very slippery slope. If you're going to start interjecting, if you're going to make a movie, if you're going to make a movie about a real person, and then you start interjection fictitious people who never were part of this person's life, and you're in a movie. To me, that's a slippery slope. Like, what are you going to do with that character? He never had that relationship.
It doesn't
with
matter. It doesn't matter.
CW does it all the time.
It doesn't matter.
But this is okay.
It's a movie.
But so are you relegating this to CW?
No,
why I'm
because
saying
there's certain
I think
CW
it-
shows that are fantastic that do that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
and
just
this
saying when you are positioning yourself to be a real movie, and you're putting a real, like, this isn't a, I'm not saying that, like, with Sleepy Hollow, you're putting people in touch with, George Washington and things like that. That we can tell. But there is nothing in this movie that says, hey, you know what? This movie is a fiction. Or, this is only partially true.
It doesn't matter. They do it all the
I
time.
just say people-
Dramatized real life events have fictionalized characters.
If
They
you're
do it
changing
all
the names to
time.
the characters, that's one thing. But if this character didn't exist, then
That's my point.
why would you build a relationship with something that never happened at all? And
because you're telling a story about somebody's arc, and that fictionalized character, then why even have Rayon? It's a made up character. It's,
Well, we
it's
just
helping
said that
him
it-
moving along his arc.
again, and that's where the slippery slope. For me, it's a slippery slope when you start doing that. Because and it brings on more controversy, because as far as writing goes, then you go, well, how do we know you're not making up all this stuff about the FDA? How do we know you're not making up? If you want us to take you seriously and you're using a real person and it's dealing with a very serious topic that, it is still relevant today, because Bono just last week was talking about how close they are to coming and finding all they need is they're close to getting rid of this virus. And so it's still in the news. And if you're portraying yourself, because Ron Woodroof was a real person, and you start fictionalizing everybody that's around him in this movie, how do you take credence in that? To me, then it takes
and
away.
answer the question: how do you take credence in Rayon?
But this is the thing.
You're starting to chip away this movie, and I'm starting to maybe not like the movie as much as I did.
I don't know why you would even care.
But this is my
it's a
question.
fictionalized account.
This is my question, though.
But he's not a fictional character. He lived through
hold on,
this.
But these characters aren't like out of the blue. They're not adding some random person that never affected his life. These are people who are representative of people he did live with.
I understand,
People he,
but
did-
then I'm saying you can't have him have a relationship then, and then pretend
Well, in
that
real
that
life he did,
relationship
I believe.
is real.
In real life, I believe
Yes, you
he-
can,
But
because the only reason why you would care is if you knew. If you didn't know,
You know
then
what?
It wouldn't matter to
Let's talk about another movie that we talked about earlier in the year, and Captain Phillips.
Right.
I mean, they didn't fictionalize. They didn't put Captain Phillips around a fake crew.
Okay, but
They-
here,
and
to
there's
your
a lot of
point,
there is a
to
lot
your
of
point, a
controversy.
lot of the crew say that's
But-
not how it happened.
no, and
they did it.
I understand, but
So,
they
but
were
how
real
do you-
people.
So what?
These people,
but they fictionalized the accounts, and you're okay with that?
I'm just saying, like, you're talking about an arc of a character that didn't exist, and I'm like, well, then you're drawing.
Wait a minute. How do you know
things
it didn't exist?
Because
You
I
don't know
just
that.
she didn't exist. I just asked you.
You
Did
said
that character?
I was talking about the
Dr.
arc
Eve-
of, no,
Dr.
hold on a
Eve
second.
Sachs.
I was talking about the character of Ron Woodroof.
Right.
He exists.
he
has
exists.
an arc.
No, and that's what I said. But Dr. Eve Sachs does not exist.
I'm not talking about her.
But we
character.
are. We were talking about. You were talking about her relationship with him.
Right.
And how much of a relationship?
Well, I don't
can
know
you
how to
make?
fix this argument.
I don't know.
I'm
I'm just saying.
I'm really trying.
I'm just saying it's a
I'm
slippery
like,
slope.
I'm trying to
I
go
think that's
back in my head. I'm
absolutely
like,
ridiculous.
That's
I'm like,
okay.
Rush. We talked about Rush at some point. They dramatized that. Who knows? Now where can we talk about?
Because
Let's see.
otherwise you're doing a
music.
documentary.
I like music.
That's not what they
No,
do.
It's. But when you start making characters
No
up,
music.
That's there was no music. That's all I'm saying. When you start making characters up to move your based on a true story, it's one thing to fudge like a certain event to make it so that it fits within the parameters, and we talked about that in Captain Phillips, and we all agreed that we didn't have a problem with that. But when you're starting to make up characters that never existed, and you're saying that your story is about this real guy, well, how do I know? I know that Ron Woodroof is a real guy.
Who cares? What difference does it make? If it makes a good story, it's not a documentary. If it makes a good story, it makes a good story. I don't care if you fake all the characters around him or not.
Then I have a hard time buying into knowing that everybody's fake around this real guy. Then I have a hard time buying, well, what else is this movie telling me that I shouldn't believe that?
But here's ultimately you're supposed to walk away with themes and if nothing else, a feeling.
But maybe those feelings were fabricated. Like
every movie's fabricated.
No.
Every movie's a manipulation. That's how they're designed.
I disagree.
It's fake. It's not even it's 24 frames or 30 in a second. I mean, it's not even real life.
But then this is fiction.
It's all lights and mirrors.
But then you can't say that this is I understand what it takes to make a movie.
But my point is, they say it's based on the fact that I feel like you're trying to say it has to be a documentary, it has to be authentic. Otherwise, it's not a good movie. And I'm going, who cares? Every movie's fake. We know that. If at the end of it you get the experience that the filmmakers want, you have a wonderful story. It's a great story. Who cares if it's a real character that had a fake arc or a real arc?
Don't go off pretending that don't say you're based off of and start.
But it is based off. That's why it says based. It doesn't say.
I understand, but when you're going into it that way, these people, like especially like this doctor, you're not expecting them to, because what else are they inventing? Like seriously, like what else are they? Because people look at movies when somebody says you don't care, but basically if you're going off and you're saying, hey, this is based off of a true story, like and take a movie like Argo. Okay, there's another movie. I don't believe they were making up characters in Argo. Like those prisoners weren't made. Like the people who were hiding out weren't made up. And
okay, what
stuff
about
like that.
Patch Adams?
Hold on.
Oh, Patch Adams is a bad movie, so I'm not even going to address Patch Adams.
Fair enough. Well, we disagree there. Okay, but part of the thing is, remember the movie, I forget when exactly came out, but it was about like the Center of Disease and things like that, and their dealings with AIDS.
And the band played on.
Okay, there you go, right? That has a perspective that is obviously way high, you know what I mean? It's not tied to one person, and so just like in books, there's first person, second person, you know what I mean? There's levels of this, and even within those levels, you can be as high objective or subjective. This is a very subjective, from his point of view, movie.
Sure.
And so in that respect, you can take it, you can change up various things. Now, again, if you were more from a helicopter view, like as the band plays on, then you owe it, you're saying to that audience, hey, contractually, we're going to tell it more of, event-based and things like that, rather than a per person and emotion and feeling type of story.
I'm just saying, if they had a title card, much to how you said American Hustle started, maybe that wouldn't bother me as much.
Well, let's re-edit it. To Sarah's point about the editing, right? What I liked, they used a very common technique, and they slightly changed it because in the sense of every time the piercing sounds of him, getting wobbly, and then normally the sound cuts off when the person actually hits. But again, going back to it being really subjective to him, the sound cut out before he hit because that's when he lost consciousness, rather than falling down when the audience would lose, whatever you want to call it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, no, and who else found that? I mean, that sound was piercing. Like that sound was
painful.
Yeah, it was. You were really put into like that scene when he was in the intersection. I thought he was going to get hit, but I thought another car was going to tag him. When he
I liked nobody get off the road.
Get off the right. Yeah,
no, and it just speaks to everyone's so in their own world. They're like, okay, this person, they'd have no compassion towards this person could be.
Well, and that's a reflection of who he was at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll take it to yet another point. We haven't talked about Steve Zahn. Steve Zahn's character as the cop. Well, first off, it's the first time I've seen Steve Zahn in a movie in a little while. So it was like, wow, hey, Steve Zahn. And he was really great. And how he he was a very selfish guy. Like, he went to Steve Zahn at the beginning of the movie. He goes running to him for his protection, and then he belts him. But then his selfishness sort of kind of melted away, saying, hey, you know what? I have something that might ease your father's pain and suffering, because his father was going through Alzheimer's, I believe it was. That scene where Steve comes out and helps him and brings him to the house, and I thought that was a really
the medication on
and
him.
he uses the medication on him. I thought that was a really good scene, and I thought Steve Zahn, like I said, I thought it was really great to see him again.
Yeah, I mean they were together in Sahara.
Yeah,
that's right.
I watched that movie when they put it on TV.
Yeah, I like the books. The Dark Pit books were good. But anyway, separate.
But
Sound.
you know what? Also going back to the editing, I loved how there was a lot of jump cuts and cut on action, and especially there was one moment when Matthew McConaughey's character was leaving Mexico. He was packing up his car with all the medicine, but it just went from cut to cut to cut, and it kind of reflected, all those fast cuts reflected his self as a character. He doesn't have a lot of time in life, and it felt like rushed because he's rushing through things and stuff, and I liked the editing choice in that matter.
Yeah, I enjoyed the way that it was edited, and I think too the way that they filmed it augments the way that you can edit a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only catch to them, filming this quickly and low budget is all those nitpickers out there have already pointed
Continuity
out
problems?
all the continuity issues, like things that did not exist in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah,
things that came out in 2000 and made it into the film. Posters of cars, if you want to look out for those. But that being said,
I do remember, I don't remember what scene, but I do remember as I was watching it, I think we were in somebody's kitchen, and I went, wow, that sure looks like a modern kitchen for 1985.
yeah, or TVs,
But,
gadgets, things like that. But
The plasma TV, no.
So.
But you have to kind of just be like, okay, they made it quick.
But by the way,
and they have
still a
very
good
low
movie.
budget, so they don't have
So
a,
good
not a lot of
movie.
art team on this. Go ahead.
to the editing, I think again, we mentioned at the top of the podcast that there were very great comedic moments, and what I liked is that they knew when to hit him, right?
Yeah.
For example, one of my favorite moments is you didn't even really need this scene, but he's jerking off, and it's girl, guy. I'm gonna kill that.
I'm gonna kill you, right? Yeah, that was great.
It just kind of elevated their relationship of like, because moments earlier he said, I love this guy. I forget what the context was, but they were finally kind of coming to terms. He said something good about Rayon without him being in the room, and then I'm gonna kill that guy.
Gonna kill that guy. Oh, I love the scene in the hospital when they first meet. When, and again, I thought that was really comedic as well. Like, get away from me! I'm not, just get away from me. You play cards,
And they
sure.
play cards.
It's like, yeah, and I loved that was like the beginning. Going back to Jennifer Garner for 1 second, I thought that the date was sweet. I thought that was a very, in the restaurant. I thought that
With
was
the
a
flower
very, with the
picture?
flower picture. I thought that there was a very sweet.
I thought that was
moment.
that was a great technique we've never seen before, because it not only, how many times you bring, it's such a cliche, get the girl flowers and things like that, but then the hidden meaning behind that. So now you're telling backstory, through this device. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And then bringing it back later with punching the walls and her rearranging it and it being off tilt, and then bringing it back and correcting it to make it look nice. Like, it was used a lot, and I think it was used well.
Yeah.
That's how I'm gonna. If I have a date, that's what we're
You're
doing.
gonna bring a painting from Target or IKEA?
No, he's gonna have his mom paint some flowers, just like 10 portraits of flowers, so that he can take them on dates.
That's true.
See, I can read Phil's mind. Got this.
All right. Well, how do we go? Let's go on to music, because we haven't talked anything about the music in this film.
Oh my goodness.
Alexandra Streliski. Never heard of the guy before. But
Is it a girl or a guy?
great question.
Don't know.
I'm googling.
Oh, well, you
I
can
always
find it on
defer to you guys on
IMDb.
these things, because I don't even.
Finding it on IMDb.
Honestly, as I'm watching the movie, I'm not really aware of the music.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
there wasn't anything about it except for that one song.
I mean, it's, again, when there's you talk about the big budget movies, you can kind of you definitely know that there's an artifice. With this,
yeah, exactly.
it felt more real.
Yeah.
Right.
And so even though there was music and score throughout, it was effective to what it was telling, but it didn't, it's not like it was like, oh, what a great song that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For example,
never took you out of the
right.
movie.
Yeah, exactly. For example, the biggest counter to that I can think of is in 500 Days of Summer, when all of a sudden, he has sex with a girl, and it's Hall & Oates of like, and they just go into a musical number right in the middle of the movie, but it can warrant that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, again,
Kind of movie.
In this one, there was one song that seemed to be repeated during various scenes, like when he walked into the bar. There was a scene where he walked into a bar, and there was some country type song that I'd never heard before, but it was played again, I think, when he went back to Mexico and he was talking with Griffin Dunne. I actually thought I thought those scenes were really cool as well. Outside of seeing Griffin Dunne again on the big screen, I really liked that, we'd never get Griffin Dunne's backstory. We just know that he did something that got himself.
He's no longer in the United States.
He's no longer in the United States.
Practicing medicine.
But it's interesting that as a former United States doctor, he still had the passion and the drive to try to help people, and he knew that through Woodroof, he could make a buck. But I liked how they did the research.
I think he
wanted
to help people.
Yeah, I think he did too.
And another interesting fact is that the soundtrack to Dallas Buyers Club on iTunes, if you buy the album on iTunes, 40 cents of it goes to the AIDS relief charity Project Red, that's known in helping funding research, for AIDS and stuff. So I thought that was cool.
Yay, Dallas Buyers Club and iTunes.
By the way, I just love the concept of the Dallas Fire.
The idea.
Club in general. I love that.
Yeah, the meds are free, but
$400 a month. But apparently, this
Loopholes.
was something that again
they did.
This was something that they did, and that it wasn't just in Dallas, and to me that is fascinating. $400 a month, and this is what you get. I liked when that couple bought him that house, or gave him. I should say they gave him. Wasn't it their mother's house?
Which I thought, I thought that was a funny moment. He's like, okay, I can give you the X amount of money and this, and
They just want to help.
Yeah, we'll give it to you for free. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Just want to
Good,
help
I'll
and
take
be
that
good
too.
People. It's like good deal.
Yeah.
But again, he's not used to people like that. He's used to,
Everybody working the angles and trying to get a buck out of something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and plus let's face it, the people that he was hanging around with at the beginning, they aren't people that you would look up to. So, and I think that's why that makes that grocery store scene like really good. It's a strong scene, and again, I think that, and again, just I sorry to bring it up again, but as an arc, that character at the beginning of the movie would have never done that. He would have been with his friends,
Absolutely.
and he would have been get out of here, and don't look at me, whatever. If he had not changed, if he had not gotten sick, and he was grocery shopping with his friend, and he saw Joe, they would be making fun of him, and it's a really great, it's a good scene, good scene.
That was on your favorites?
Yes.
The grocery store scene?
Yes, I really liked the grocery store scene, especially just making them shake hands and doing all of that.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to go into, you expected him to get a full punch in the face. You didn't expect the handshake or anything like that. And I thought it was done really well. Especially because they did put people in these different situations, like using the same bar over and over again, where his friends, where he confronts his friends, where he goes back and forth, the grocery store, the hospital, going back and revisiting with a changed perspective. The bull rink.
Yeah,
it's a great way to have parallel scenes. You can show arc and growth. And stuff like that.
I was afraid because, again, without knowing much of Ron Woodroof and all, usually sometimes in a scene like that in the grocery store, that yokel will come back with his friends to seek, some
Justice,
semblance
some
of
weird
justice,
retribution.
some type of retribution. And I was glad that didn't happen.
I mean, Ron, he knows how they operate and stuff like that, so I think he was well aware.
Yeah.
So.
And that scene at the bar, too, when his so-called friends were there, that was another very telling scene. And, he there was that scene, and then I think the next day when he went to drive into work, and they're all standing there. There were a lot
And
of
he doesn't
fuck
even
all
get out of
y'all.
the car,
Yeah, he
and
doesn't
he
even
just
get
keeps
out of the
going.
car. Yeah.
No, some constantly really good moments throughout this film.
And I think that those helped that character. He realized he was one of them. He was part of that. And to me, at the end, he's not that guy anymore. So.
Okay, we've done well, kind of did music.
Kinda
Oh,
did,
she's
yeah.
a woman,
Well,
by
like
the way.
What's that?
Alexandra, who we looked up.
Oh.
Streliski. She was the composer. She got the composer credit. And really, she doesn't have too many credits on IMDb. She also did Les Pee-wee 3D.
Okay.
Looks like
Good
some
for
sort
her.
of hockey
That
movie.
was great.
And 2 shorts. So,
Well, Legacy Awards,
job.
did we cover like what we think, its legacy will
we
be
pretty
later
much,
on?
I don't think. I think the only nods it's going to get are for acting, and I think
I
it's going to be
agree.
for the 2 we've already discussed.
You don't think for Academy Award that you don't think it'll get squeezed in there?
Well, maybe with the 10, but I wouldn't be the.
I'm
top
gonna have to
5, so.
make a list because there's so many movies this year, and I'm gonna have to actually write out my
Yeah.
big picture list in order to see which ones make it. Because part of me wants to be like, yeah, I would be nominated for big picture, and then I think about everything that's out, everything that's still coming out, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm right around that 9 pictures in my head mark.
It's not my opinion, but I don't think the Academy would say, yeah, this is a top 10, only because if it had, they love the upstarts, that kind of things, but
Right.
that do a little bit better though. If it had done better already, it might have gotten more of that. But I just don't think it has the momentum that it would need to in order for the Academy to say, yeah, let's give it a nod.
Yeah, because I'm trying to, and again, it depends on how many they decide to go with this year.
Yeah.
And try to shoehorn in, and in my head, I'm trying to think, what is going to be, and I'm basing it off of 10. I mean, they could say it's
It'll be
5
10.
or it could be 8 this year or something.
Yeah.
But if it's 10, listen, we were talking about
You
movies.
could probably think of 10 right now that I'm sure the Academy would say over Dallas Buyers Club.
But also
I'm not
it's-
saying I agree
that's
with
what
that. I
I'm
just think that's
wondering.
what the Academy would
I mean,
do.
here's they could shoehorn it in only to take votes away from something else,
Well,
which does you know what I mean?
Okay.
That does happen.
How
Yeah.
political can we get?
No,
What
it's
is the
it's a
actual
good point.
motivation of this?
So it could happen.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a very interesting Academy Award
Season.
nomination process and season. Like I said, I still think that the best actor category is going to be crazy. I think it's going to be very tight, and unfortunately, I think it's going to come down to politicking and campaigning.
I think
Often
Jared probably won't win, but I think Matthew McConaughey will.
I think he's the front runner right now.
Really?
Really.
Ooh, interesting.
Your
Because
thoughts?
think Matthew
what
will?
they put their bodies through. I mean,
Yeah, I
I
know,
don't think
but-
we officially
I
announced
know,
it,
but you're.
I know the Academy loves that. They do.
Yeah, they do.
They lost all that weight. But I thought that was interesting because they certainly showed Jared and how much weight he lost.
Right.
But I was surprised that they didn't take more advantage of that because you only once did you see Matthew kind of without a shirt, and it's kind of in the hospital. You don't really get a good shot of it, and it was so shocking in that moment. I go. And it reminded me they probably could have taken more advantage of that to really let us see the physical effects.
But I think
And it chose not to.
His face was so sallow.
No, I
and-
agree with that, but,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying when I saw the body, I was like, "Whoa, yeah!" And then, but it was even obscured, and I'm going, "Geez, man, he lost all that weight. Put it on screen."
Yeah, and I'm like, well, how does he get on a bull without snapping like a twig on that first, bucking bronc? I mean, yeah, Matthew, you're right. They love a transformation, and Matthew McConaughey, I don't know, he could drop anywhere up to 50 pounds, and
It's like 48 or whatever. I think the last
Yeah.
count I heard, but that's why I think Jared might get the nod.
But we don't see, honestly, I don't think we see him as in physical.
Yeah, but not only
Yeah.
did he lose the weight, he's playing, a different gender. So and the Academy loves that too.
they love that too. But even to your point, he is unrecognizable. Like you didn't recognize that it was Jared Leto. They love that when an actor can immerse
Really immerse
him,
it, yeah.
him or her
Lose
self into
themselves,
that
yeah.
role. They love that. So I think he's definitely going to get nominated. I'll be very curious because going up against Michael Fassbender in 12 years. I mean, it could be tough. It's gonna be tough.
I don't know.
What?
I'm just thinking. I just feel like that. I'm so stuck on whether or not Matthew McConaughey is going to win and how political it's going to get. And I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that just based on his life, we're going to see Robert Redford get it.
Yeah.
I'm up right now because I was like, maybe I'm misthinking because he's won 2 Oscars, one for directing and one for Lifetime Achievement.
Yeah.
He's never
Never
won.
won for actor. Paul
Which
Newman.
But we can go on for this. I mean, we should
I-
have an Academy show. I mean,
Wait,
because
wait.
we talked about Bruce Dern, and Bruce.
Yeah.
They-
Oh, it's the time of year. We got it.
Yeah, and Bruce Dern is another guy who I'm pretty sure is going to get nominated, and they also love going to the older gentlemen who
But then
and
it's like,
stuff,
are you
so-
pitting kind of Bruce Dern against Robert Redford?
Yes, you would.
And then it's
Absolutely.
like, for that vote, who does it go to? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about it
Yeah.
closer to the nominations.
Well, what do we have left to discuss about Dallas Buyers Club? Any last thoughts about it from anybody?
I think. I mean, I'm sure there's more that. But we'll talk in the comments.
All right. Well, add it to the comment. Sarah? anything
I'll
from
say
you?
to the comments, I think that what I'd really like them to win, just because I do feel happy for what Leto and McConaughey's efforts, is I think it would be really cool if they won side cast. I think it's fun. It is a pretty tight knit cast. Like there's not a ton of people in this
No,
movie,
no.
so I think it would be really cool if they won.
I think, unfortunately, American Hustle is going to take that.
Yeah.
Come
probably.
on.
I'm
They
just
have-
saying.
They have better costumes.
Just saying.
Yeah, I still don't understand
You know
what
what?
you
His
have
dress
against
was
American
just as
Hustle.
low.
Listen, when I walked out of Dallas, again, you're going into a movie sort of kind of knowing what you're going to get. It's a tough movie. You're going into a movie that's dealing with a rough subject. For me, that's always hard going into. It's almost like you got to prep yourself for it. And
Oh yeah.
when the end came and walking out of the theater, I felt like I had seen something that was really good. I thought that I saw a performance that was very courageous, and I thought it was a performance of a career for McConaughey. I thought it was fantastic, and I just walked away feeling, wow, I just saw a really good movie. And for me, it wasn't as difficult to watch. Like I was really, maybe because I was expecting to get beat up when I was watching it, but when I realized that the theme is about him being courageous and fighting this and taking this fight, to healthcare and what he was doing with this Dallas Buyers Club. And, to me, I walked away more positive about, certain things than I expected to. And I wasn't really, if he had died at the end, like if that would have really sort of kind of depressed me more. But I liked how they handled that as well. I liked how the last shot was him on the bull, and that's a metaphor, the beast being AIDS, and him, and that was the final freeze frame shot. I like that. It was good.
I really also like that metaphor. Just the fact that you're getting on this ride, and no matter what, there's pretty much 100% that you're falling off. It's just how long you last.
Yeah.
And how they carried that through, and how they really took that to heart, and its connection to Texas and all of that. I did not leave with an uplifting feeling when I left this movie. I did leave thinking it was very good. I'm really glad I saw it. I left with much more, I guess, heavy.
Well, uplifting, I wasn't coming out skipping.
Oh,
I
that's
was
totally what I
came out and
imagined. I just
said,
imagined it was just like,
I came out
yeah,
feeling like,
this is a great
this was a
movie.
good
Let's go get
movie
some ice
about,
cream.
I thought it was a good movie about courage. And I really thought, and that to me is what I took. He took a stance, and I really enjoyed the perspective that the movie gave.
Gotcha.
So there. And John, I still love you.
Oh.
This
This was
Yeah.
heated. Well, I'm just saying, I don't want, this was probably our most heated, but that's what this is all about. So that's
There you
all.
go.
All we disagreed was about
Oh,
how
say your
You're
final
not drawing
comment.
me in.
we both agreed he had the arc. We just
All right,
disagreed how
follow
much.
Dimitri at Anatomy of a Movie.
Anatomy of a movie, folks.
Yeah.
Sarah, she goes, this is the way. Nobody has social media here, but Anatomy of a Movie does. Movie Anatomy on Twitter, Facebook.com/Anatomy of a Movie. Check out anatomyofamovie.com for more of your favorite movie dissections. We just did Nebraska. We've got a whole slew of movies coming up, including American Hustle, including The Hobbit, and
Wolf of Wall Street, I guess.
Wolf
We'll
of
be
Wall
doing.
Street.
Saving Mr. Banks. I'm so
Saving Mr.
excited
Banks.
for that one.
Yeah. You said Saving Spanks.
That's what it sounded like. Saving Spanks.
I was like, what?
We're gonna do that one too. Saving
know
We're
Spanks.
going out of business? What?
Anyway,
Oh, the
guys,
music's out. We gotta get out of here.
Never
we'll
going out
see
of
you
business.
for the next
We'll
one.
see you, folks.
See you later.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.